Thanks for joining us. I'm delighted to welcome you all, and thank you most importantly for making the time to join me, Daniel Fellows, the General Manager at Diversio UK and EU, alongside Zoe Lockwood, the Chief People Officer at Oakley Capital. For those of you who may be meeting Diversio for the first time, Diversio is a people, culture, inclusion, and analytics and training platform. Companies use Diversio to make critical business decisions powered by our ethical AI for the deepest understanding of their team. Training and education programs, software, analytics, we were launched in Canada in 2019, and now we're working in 51 countries globally. During our live and on-demand webinar, Diversio Conversations, Insights from Oakley Capital on navigating people and cultural transformation, we'll cover 5 main areas, and obviously any questions from the floor are hugely welcome throughout. We'll look at current workforce trends and explore some key opportunities and challenges shaping the UK workforce today. Inside Oakley Capital, metaphorically speaking, how they're turning people and culture ambitions into a continual process of learning, education and change. And also the Diversio partnership, discovering what impact Diversio has made on Oakley Capital. And then also some actionable insights for HR leaders and a really exciting Q&A with Zoe, with some advice, some actions you can take into your workplace today. So it's going to kick off with a just quick brief overview of Diversio. Diversio is a global leader in people and cultural solutions, serving organizations in 100 languages across the globe, spanning 51 countries. Our academically validated platform offers comprehensible DEI measurement, data analytics, strategy, and consulting services. Our global mission, our local and global mission, we're committed to transforming workplaces to be inclusive and harassment-free through data-driven people solutions and very proactive measures and interventions. Think of Diversio in 3 key areas around the data collection and the analytics and the recommendations and interventions. A world-class education and training platform covering around 40 courses globally currently. And then also consultation. We can help you around strategy, around people and culture to help you deliver that across your organization. We're trusted and we work with some of the world's most innovative companies, much like Oakley Capital and some other folks, including Microsoft, Shell, Amazon, British Business Bank, Disney, and Accenture. How do we build a better workplace? 3 main areas within our dashboard. One is really around inclusion, understanding what is the inclusion score within the companies and the partners and the clients that we work with. We do this through capturing demographic and also workplace data, looking at age, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation. And also from that analysis, we're able to make recommendations around areas of improvement to help companies continue the journey or improve on certain aspects of workplace culture and inclusivity. How we help drive this change? 6 key areas, really looking at the inclusivity survey and the tool through training, through certification, employee engagement, program and policy audit, and also working with our world-class consultants who are really ultimately a virtual and also an internal extension of your team. So we thought we'd kick off today just for a couple of moments. There's been obviously lots of conversations, lots of headlines within the news, and Anya, our Chief Operating Officer, has put this together, and we've been sharing with our clients both across the EU and UK and also in North America, because there's going to be lots of conversations internally, and maybe you want some help to communicate and navigate these interesting times globally. So 99.9% of the companies that we've spoke to across all the verticals we work in are very much continuing with their diversity, equity, inclusion, people and cultural strategies. So we thought we'd just run through a few slides here and just give you some insights and also some strategies around companies are moving forward or potentially repositioning under a more people and culture umbrella. So it's about being proactive about your D&I strategy. Each organization's approach, whether to stay the course with DI or refocus as cultural first, should be quite deliberate, strategic decision informed by your own internal unique content. Factors such as board sentiment, shareholder priorities, industry norms, and governing contracting implications all obviously play a role. But being proactive in your communications, probably for the time being internally, ensures your company is prepared to navigate external pressures while maintaining alignment with your long-term people, culture, and commercial goals. Two areas that we've identified here. Number one is around staying the course, and the second one is around refocus as culture first. So the first option, as we've seen the majority of partners, is reinforcing your company's commitment with strong internal and external messaging, building alignment across key stakeholders by emphasizing the business case for D&I around innovation, retention, and performance metrics, and also working or continue to work with Diversio's data to demonstrate the measurable impact of D&I efforts, ensuring you're getting buy-in from stakeholders. Another option is focusing as culture first, so people and culture, repositioning D&I initiatives under a broader cultural and workforce optimization, shift external messaging to focus on measurable outcomes, so engagement and productivity, and also working with Diversio's team to adapt messaging to ensuring alignment with both internal and external pressures. So we can help you stay the course. Option one, we're looking at data-driven business case, storytelling and communications, and tailored D&I strategies, allowing organizations, Delta, JP Morgan, and Costco have committed and continue to commit to D&I across 2025. And the second one is around rebranding D&I to culture, to help your organization shift from D&I to a cultural-focused approach that aligns with evolving expectations while preserving past progress. Support employees, really critical through this transition and these uncertain times. So we'll ensure employees feel supported and engaged during the pivot, fostering cultural growth and empowerment, even as language shifts. And then always data is critical at the heart of everything that we do. We can collaborate on the best approach for data collection, such as pausing certain demographic collection metrics or transitioning to culture and engagement data. Right, Diversio Conversations. Zoe, thank you so much for making the time today. I know from trying to get a meeting with you how incredibly busy you are. Would you like to just introduce yourself to the audience?
Absolutely. So hello everyone, my name is Zoe. I am the Chief People Officer at Oakley Capital, as Daniel outlined already. Personally, I have been a HR professional for more time than I care to mention, but certainly a couple of decades under my belt. That has been predominantly in financial services and predominantly EMEA focused, European focused. But I have dabbled in a little bit of software and a little bit of more kind of manual service products as well. The company I currently work for, I've been here for just over 3 years. That's Oakley Capital. We are a private capital asset manager. It's what we would describe as a mid-market private equity company. So we gain commitments from our investors, who are usually pension funds around the world, but not exclusively. And we use that money to purchase various companies in any given fund, normally between 12 and 15 companies across Europe. We are very much pan-European. And we are usually at the phase of ownership where the founders of those businesses are still involved, but the businesses have proven themselves successful and profitable, and it's time for them to move into the next level of sophistication and hopefully success. We have assets under management of about 12 billion euros at the moment. We have about 200 employees, albeit 5 years ago we had 40, and we are now operating in 6 countries. 5 years ago we were in 1. So I think that's probably the headlines of where we're at today.
Well, I suppose the main question is, when do you sleep, Zoe?
I'm not exclusively alone doing all of this.
Okay. We know you've got an awesome team backing you up. This is an incredibly broad question, obviously very much, as you said, based sort of pan-European for today, but what are some of the challenges and opportunities that you see across the HR landscape across the UK and Europe?
No, it is a broad question, and I think it's interesting. I suspect what industry and what level of sophistication your business has does inform that decision. But as I look at it at the moment, what my experience of the last couple of years, more so than any other time, is I see the legal landscape shifting constantly. There's always a new law or new regulation or new proposed thing happening. And I think especially as the political backdrop continues to shift and change in all of those locations too. Obviously being UK based and having left the EU, that also means not everything's moving in lockstep. So you've got this continuous trying to figure out how to manage for all of your jurisdictions. There's the continuous backdrop of AI. What does that do to jobs, job security, opportunities for business, but also what does it do to society, and what responsibility and roles can we play in all of that? It's been the perennial throughout my career, and I'd love to meet someone for whom it wasn't, is just manager skill. The level of manager skill. So many of us operate in businesses where those who become managers because they are skilled professionals in whatever their technical area of expertise is. How are we able to support them and help them understand the value of the management skill set as well? And the impact that has, I think, on employee experience, the quality of career experience, which is increasingly important to employees. And then, of course, as you've very deftly managed around just there, I think recently this backlash on DE&I has been an interesting trend.
Managers' skills, that's something I can personally relate to in the last 20 years of my career as well. It is a continual focus. Have you managed to not address it, but any sort of strategies, obviously potentially working with Diversio, whereby you've helped to get everybody to the same level of perhaps maturity or inclusive communication?
I think everything I'm thinking about for today's conversation is a journey. I think we have taken substantial steps forward here at this organization in the last 3 years. We are actually just coming to the end of our performance cycle. And it's been really fascinating to see how managers have leaned into that this year, having understood from prior experiences the value of really preparing for some of these conversations carefully, of how to frame objectively feedback, etc. So I think we have invested time in and money in supporting and coaching managers, both collectively through training and then individually through almost like role playing the conversations they're nervous with, trying to bring them up that skills curve. We're also trying to do, the nudge side of things, which is something Diversio would always recommend in terms of being careful with your interventions. The nudge technique of sort of when we think it would be sensible, it's been 3 months since your formal performance review. Have you done this? Have you thought about that? Mid-years, halfway through, have you thought about this? Here's a good way you might frame that discussion. And so I think we've invested our time more than perhaps one might ordinarily in trying to give managers tools and be present and available for them on this front.
Yeah, I think the key word there was process, isn't it? And journey. It's not something that's invariably going to change, but with the coaching, support, strategies, willingness to lean in is a critical aspect as well.
I think it's interesting in a business like ours that's grown as fast as it has. 12 months ago, 50% of the managers delivering these messages hadn't actually worked here for more than 12 months themselves, and therefore they didn't really know how things work around here. We've also got, as I'm sure other firms are experiencing, the intergenerational effect. We've got leaders who think that this stuff shouldn't really be talked about at all, and employees who think they should be having a career focused conversation every 3 days. So we've been sort of navigating through all of that as well.
It sounds like every business that we work with or personally have worked in as well. It's probably a little bit too early. We saw a shift towards people and culture probably midway through 2024. Diversity, equity and inclusion, or directors inclusion and belonging, whichever acronym you care to use, had reached a level of maturity within businesses. It was very much baked into companies, baked into the ethos, baked into strategies, communications, aligned to commercial performance as well. I wouldn't put you on the spot to ask you around the complete financial services industry because it's incredibly broad, it's incredibly nuanced. To your point previously, we do have a lot of legal legislation in the UK. We've got more coming through in April. We've also got EU guidelines from CRSD and ESRS, so we are legally obligated to report on certain aspects around gender and pay equality as well. I know you've got your ear very close to the ground at all times. Have you heard anything around that D&I, around financial services, or changing maybe in the verbiage or the way that you communicate what you do?
It's interesting, isn't it? As you say, there's a broad range with financial services, and actually, I think what you showed earlier, referencing some of the investment banks and how they've approached this, has obviously been one response. People are clear that they're still dedicated to it, but they're using different language to not get tripped up by the language. That's not what I'm seeing in private capital as a rule. And even within private capital, I think you would break it down based on the maturity curve of the businesses at hand and their heritage. So speaking from a mid-sized sort of 20-ish year old business that's firmly got its feet in Europe, and having checked in with sort of 20 of my closest peers in that space as well, I think the general theme for us is your theme one, which is sort of, keep on keeping on, bed in, remind everyone what the value of these conversations are. We do not want terminology to get in the way of progress, and if we start to see that, I'm sure we would think differently about it. But what we've seen is the value in, at the early stage of maturity, being able to separate out culture from ED&I inclusion type initiatives. There is a risk that I perceive that if companies jump directly to an integrated sort of people and culture strategy, you're missing the opportunity to have the important conversations that help educate and bring up the educational curve where people might have different experiences born of their background. And so the view I hold and what I have seen in terms of response so far from European peers is that our context is, let's keep where we are and keep with the carefully planned education and inclusion activities we've got going on. And then let's see, I once saw a model that had a 5-stage maturity curve on this, and absolutely by stage 4, stage 5, it should be completely integrated. And I fully agree that is the end state, the dream state. But I think there is a phase before that as people come to understand the experiences of others.
Yeah, I super agree. Oz would all sometimes in life like to jump from stage 1 to 5 without actually going through stages 2, 3, and 4. They're there for a reason. They're proven strategies to help companies perform. Back to people and culture, or D&I, or cultural changes. Clearly, Oakley Capital is not unique in wanting to proceed on this journey, a sort of process of change, embedding it across your organization. Probably like some of the attendees on the call today, what were the sort of opportunities that you saw, and some of the broadly, non-specifically, of course, some of the challenges maybe that you face that people might recognize or people can be aware that they might encounter as well?
Well, I think the primary context for us, as I think I've described already, is this massive growth. Our employee base exploded, and the explosion happened during COVID. So, that point in 2019 where everyone's in the office 5 days a week, et cetera, there was somewhere in the region of 50 to 60 employees total in the business. By the time we're actively back in the office frequently in 2021, there was 130, and we're now 200. So the doubling, trebling of the firm during an 18-month period that was very uncertain more generally, it led to a group of employees who didn't really know what the culture of the organization was. Indeed, it wasn't clear what the culture of a 120-strong organization was expected to be, but there was certainly no development by osmosis that you maybe get if 4 or 5 people a year join. So there was this question across the whole business, and a large group of employees who didn't have their anchors as a result. And they were learning from people who were also new and hadn't been around those people who'd been here for 5 and 10 and 15 years and really felt they knew what the culture was. But also a larger employee base means a broader range of life experiences. It means a broader, panoply of views on approaches to work, approaches to life, all the different backgrounds we think of as being part of the inclusion journey and trying to bring everyone in. And I think a general lack of focus on people as being a value creation lever in a business. The people function was a personnel function when I joined.
Yeah.
And so I would see those as the biggest spaces that I saw opportunity to operate in. Yeah.
I mean, it's an entire webinar by itself, but how do you hire that many people in that short space of time?
The piece before I joined, I honestly don't know how they did it, and there was a lot of consequences for that. But yeah, I did very quickly identify that as a need, and we had a specialist brought in to take ownership and control over that entire process. But it was epic. At one point, we had 48 roles open in a company that, as I say, is now 200 people. So it's been interesting.
And then also, none of us want to go back to COVID, but having that online culture as well, trying to build that, then also bringing people slowly, surely back to the offices, but then having pan-European offices as well, so that there are so many different variables and nuances to creating a people and culture on so many different levels, to your point, generational, maybe different departments as well, different funds, bringing those other business maybe you've acquired as well.
There was also a physical imperative. I mean, we'd run out of space during that period, but obviously no one was going to commit to new office space during an uncertain period. So physically, everyone didn't have a desk when they returned. And so how do you recreate a cohesive culture in an online environment, essentially, it's been interesting.
Without desks and chairs, yeah. Absolutely. So post-COVID, we're all through it. We're starting to breathe. Again, we've all probably bought a dog as well. Workplaces have changed. Did you have sort of maybe 3 to 4 sort of key objectives in terms of how you thought about building momentum towards your sort of broader people and culture strategy?
Yeah, very much so. And I don't know how other people would always feel about this, but I have this view that whilst I believe EDI and everything and the actions we take should be distinct in that space, fundamentally good EDI practices are good management practices as well, and vice versa. So as I think about what were we trying to build around our people and culture strategy, I did a piece of work actually shortly before I officially arrived to try and understand from people what was great about this firm and what were the frustrations, and thematically it became very clear from that what the opportunity to unlock momentum would look like. And a lot of it was around transparency, isn't it always? But there was a sense of like, we just don't understand how decisions are made here. We don't understand what it takes for me to succeed here. I see different outcomes depending on who delivers the message, who, et cetera, et cetera. And so connected to that, consistency and clarity. Like where can we really quickly kind of deliver some wins just by being clearer and more consistent in our communication style. And then I did have a specific goal that was about EDI. I really wanted to trigger proper conversations about the impact background has on your likelihood of entering our industry and succeeding in it. The heritage we have as a business is actually fascinating. Our founder has never stepped foot in a university. He's never worked for the companies that usually people who run private capital businesses work for. He was a serial entrepreneur himself. And so we have this really interesting, quite different heritage stemming from there. But we had fallen into an approach of kind of hiring from the same places, often from networks, etc. And so really wanted to spark a conversation about our heritage is different. How are we going to continue to capture that by finding different people more broadly in our firm and bringing those voices to the table?
It's incredible. Just back to transparency. Is that communicating a strategy, or is it communicating numbers or goals?
It was kind of across everything. So the complaints were people would disappear without anyone knowing where they'd gone. It was people turning up and them not knowing they'd been hired. They didn't even know there was a job open. It was, I don't know what it takes for me to get promoted. It was, I don't know what I'm going to get paid in any given year. It was, I don't know what the strategy of the firm is. I don't know what the firm is thinking about the work that I do. So it was across pretty much everything. There was a sense of a disconnectedness across the different populations. So I have most influence and control over reward and career progression. So I use that influence and control as heavily as I could. And we skipped from nobody knows what it takes to get promoted to competency frameworks that were then used in the performance conversations as a way to, back to the manager skill, oblige managers to talk about all different aspects of someone's performance, good and bad, rather than skipping over anything they thought would be uncomfortable in a discussion. We skip from pay TBD to ranges, which we express to the employee base, and we reiterate every year. We run a session before they go into their performance reviews to remind them what we've done in terms of preparing for their comp, what they should expect out of it, roughly speaking, and how they can contextualize whatever they get in the room. And we've, and then on performance, the same thing. We skip from it's all done with the partners, slightly finger in the air, through to dispersed populations, having these calibration and objective discussions along the way as well. But I also then sought to improve communications around some of the other topics as well. Hiring for us, we've now got a group that we consult with regularly to explain to them. The mid to senior level professionals, we have a bi-weekly to explain anything across not only the HR spectrum, but also the partners join. And if there's any critical messaging that they need to deliver, we update them in that group too.
I mean, again, when do you get to sleep?
Again, I'm not alone.
I suppose a cadence is unique, isn't it? Is it a bi-weekly conversation? Is it a communication once a month? Do you use specific tactics? I think you've got a great communications team that help you as well. Is it all of those areas? Is there anything specific you could kind of advise people on today that's worked for you?
So, yeah, and everything's contextual, isn't it? Let's always just remember that it's all about what works for your business. But we have definitely found the bi-weekly seems to work well for us, and we have a few bi-weekly. So there's this slot on a Monday that is always used for something bi-weekly, whether that is we're taking the mid to senior level professionals and having a general chat with them, such that if there's messages we need them to deliver down the firm, they feel prepared for it. So slightly more informal, slightly more leadership level. Then we have our bi-weekly investment meeting, which is usually the opportunity to all talk through and share how we're thinking about deals, what's going on in the businesses that we own, et cetera, et cetera. So there's always something that's business focused in some way, shape or form, but one's more people, one's more, strategy and success. And then each of our different teams has a minimum of a bi-weekly team meeting that's more focused for them. Some go weekly, some stick with the bi-weekly. So I think all of that has worked really well. But something we did miss at the start, and I think we're trying to improve on, is it's also broader communication. So it's not just if you were in that meeting, you get to hear it. It's, well, what if I wasn't there for any reason? So there we tend to do communications on some of the more critical or more pervasive things. They tend to be on a more quarterly basis. So quarterly newsletter, look back, look forward, quarterly town halls to sort of go, right, okay, what's happened over the last 3 months that you might benefit from knowing about, or what's the critical theme in the business at the moment. And we tailor those to the audiences. So for our corporate functions, for example, once a quarter, they all gather. And we will bring in at least 2 members of the investment team to talk about something, whether it's a deal that's been particularly interesting, whether it's, we've been raising funds recently. So we'd have the investor relations team come and tell us about what that experience is like. Just really trying to be thoughtful about how we use people's time.
That's incredible. Yeah, thoughtful, cadence, tailored, specific, always on. Yeah, I think when people don't hear anything, that's when maybe fatigue can kick in, or a little bit of inertia, or a lack of engagement, particularly if you're running people in data surveys or maybe engagement surveys as well. So always keep, and also empowering. You really empower the organization of people in different teams.
It wasn't easy. I really had to convince the leadership that this was the right thing to do. There is definitely a default to it, if we keep the information close, then there's no risk of it being misinterpreted. There's no risk of someone taking it and using it inappropriately. And so we had to sort of step lightly and be like, well, try this one thing and let's see what happens. Oh, it turns out it's better if you do that. They're more open to believing you've got good intent if you do this, etc. Oh, telling people what they might earn didn't mean they all expected immediately to earn the top of that number that you've put out there. And so it was breadcrumbs to start with, and then eventually that switched to the leadership going, we should communicate this. We need to communicate this right in order to get the right benefit from what we're doing. So it wasn't easy at the start. There's definitely putting your neck on the line a little bit here and there.
No, absolutely. I can imagine a gradual process. It's trust, isn't it? It's mutual trust, sort of bringing the boundaries down slowly, not going to full radical transparency model, but building that trust right between leadership and also every other part of the business.
Yeah. And they always need balancing. There's some things the employees want to know about that it's simply not appropriate, and we will tell them that. But because they know we communicate what we can, they tend to accept that. That
trust has been built up. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, let's talk about us, shall we? Diversio. If you can remember back or that long time ago, do you remember maybe some of the key factors that decided we were going to collaborate together?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was, we're just coming into our third year of running the survey. So I guess that must have been 2.5 years ago, something along those lines. And it was actually a collaboration between the information EDI committee we had at the time, myself, and also the head of our now sustainability, speaking about language, then our ESG head. So we were essentially all very interested in multiple things. So I think the main thing was probably, my view is just always what gets measured, what gets done, right? We hadn't any particular metrics, and we certainly didn't have metrics over time, and we certainly didn't have independent metrics that demonstrated there was a value to the business of going down this route. So I can produce the McKinsey surveys and all of those things that show it's the highest quartile performers have the highest quartile diversity stats, but what about for us, and how does that compare to, a refrain here was our industry is not very diverse, so it's not fair to compare us to X, Y, or Z. Fine. So we were trying to find a way to measure something in a way that would be valid to this group. And I knew the data Diversio offered would flip the narrative, because there were already, I think, over 200 private equity companies in your database for us to reference ourselves against. There is also another primary driver for our leaders who are perhaps more on the cynical end of all of this. It is irrefutable that our investors are asking about this, and they expect us to have good answers to where are you today, and what is your navigated journey forward from here? What are you planning to do? And Diversio was able to offer, and was very clear on its ability to offer data in investor-friendly fashion. We have actually, even though we are European, we have a lot of Canadian and American investors in our investor base. And there is this international grouping called ILPA, which has certain survey formats, and Diversio on the front foot to say, we can actually deliver your data in that format. And if you need it in different formats, we can cut it that way to help you too. It was the very consultative approach, and the fact that it's not just the data, we will give you guidance once we've seen your data too. And it was the ability to roll it out to our portfolio companies. So we have done this not only for ourselves, but we have offered this to every company that we own as well. And so we were looking for an organization that could deliver both of those things in a cost-efficient fashion.
And if you can specifically, what exactly did Diversio doing for Oakley Capital?
Yeah. So back in the setup, I think a lot of what Diversio did was to help us get the logistics right. So this is, in European terms, a bit of a minefield to get right. And so one of the things I remember being eternally grateful for was the ability to ensure the pan-European legal framework was respected on all of this, and to adapt the question set and our approach based on that. I think it saved a lot of headaches, legal, employment law calls on our side, et cetera, et cetera. And in and of itself, that was of, immense value. There was a lot of logistical support. How do we do this? What does this look like? How should we get to this population, etc.? And I would say on the portfolio company side, that was particularly helpful, where, here everyone's got a laptop, it's fine. You can just send them a link and away we go. But some of the portfolio companies, it was people on the shop floor who never touch a laptop, don't have an email, all of those things. And you were able to just help us adapt and think about how to get to those populations. That was really helpful to have that range of thoughtfulness. Responsiveness, you were just super available, guiding on key questions, but you also drafted recommended communications. We then turned them into Oakley speak, but it was great to have that starter for 10 and a recommendation on cadence and when to lean into a conversation. The other thing that was super helpful in the setup process was you actually came and presented at one of our team meetings. Not you personally, Daniel, obviously you weren't there at the time, but Diversio. And it was really helpful to have that independent third-party voice to create confidence in what we were trying to get done. If I think about the context of the business at that time, there wasn't. Again, we were in that swirl of, hang on, you don't tell me anything. Hang on, I don't really know how this works. Yes. Hang on. So we didn't have high trust in something like this. And so having that independent third-party voice, but also an independent third-party system was really helpful to us in that moment.
And I, being a very empathetic person, I imagine it was quite maybe an anxious time. You've invested company money and you need to hit the bullseye. I mean, obviously over a gradual period of time. And I suppose we've been together 2.5 years, but it's a continual process, is it?
Absolutely. I think anxious is probably a good word. Yeah. I was checking daily how many people had filled the thing out and sort of, fascinated to see what came out the other side. There was definitely an element of 2 or 3 of us committing to this and choosing to commit the company's money to it. And there was a lot of setup work, even with all of that support. So I think, I guess it's a guidance to anyone else who goes through this. As with everything, we all fall foul of the planning fallacy. Just make sure you give yourself 25% more time for it than you think you need to give yourself for it. But it was definitely the interaction with Diversio during that period was very easy, again, very present. And actually very reassuring. As a specific example, towards the end of the survey, we still only had 40% of population, I think it was, that had responded. And we were extremely anxious about that. Even though I know in review process, everyone fills out on the last day, I couldn't translate that across mentally to the survey. And so just having someone who's like, don't worry, on average, this is the way it plays out. If you can get to 60% in your first year, you're doing well. It just gave me the ability to sort of sleep at night while this was running. And in the end, we got to, I think it was like 68% in the first year as well.
Yeah, we all wake up at 3 a.m. most mornings thinking about those elements. I can't believe we've thrown through all the questions. I suppose we've had a few questions from the floor. I'll just ask you, if there's people watching that are in your position, they're facing the issues, what are some of the key tips of advice that you'd give them? We've only got 10 minutes, but what are some maybe top 3 or 4 things you would talk to a company that's maybe thinking about partnering with Diversio or shares some of the challenges, which you can obviously always have because it's a process, it's in a journey. We're not saying we've got to a specific point.
I just want to be super clear. I'm not sitting here saying we've nailed it. All we've done is improved, but I fundamentally believe having Diversio with us has been part of that improvement. So I guess tip 1 is just always, it's a journey. Where's your first step? What's the right approach to that? And I really think that context is critical in that situation. So, I speak from my seat, but if you're hearing things that also resonate, then it is, I think the things that are really important to me are, where are you on that readiness curve? So if you think about, complete resistance through to complete integration, how ready are you to step over into genuinely lifting up that stone and seeing what's underneath it? That is an anxious moment. It's an anxious moment for leadership. It's an anxious moment for whoever's choosing to lead it. And I think you have to believe your firm is at least willing to act on the findings. There is nothing worse than opening the box, discovering a whole bunch of moldy stuff in there, and then just closing it again and hoping it'll all go away. It's only going to get moldier. So you really do. I think you really have to have the context that there is good intent, even if there's not complete comprehension or clarity or nervousness. The way I went about that was having at least two partners in my group of the broader partnership who I knew were engaged and bought in and were going to be sitting there with me saying this is the right thing to do, even if there were 8 who were unsure, or 6 that were unsure and 2 who were actively anti type thing. So I think there's something about that. But a big part for me as well is education. You've got to educate people on, why even care about all of this. It's the classic visuals that everyone's seen of like a carefully organized salad and a mixed up salad, which is diversity, which is inclusion, all of that sort of stuff. What's the way, what's the story that's going to help convert your group, and investing time into that, whether it's individually or collectively. But also the findings on Diversio, they are super helpful. They are an objective evaluation of critical inclusion criteria done in a very simple way. But it's a lot of work to educate people on what it actually means as well. So be ready for the education process. You really, if it's you or whether it's a small group of people, you've really got to have a cohesive core that are going to lean into all of this with you. Again, Diversio were amazing. I think your COO actually came, or maybe even your CEO at the time, came and spoke to our partnership to explain how it works. Because our leadership were like, we can't be this terrible. I was like, we're not saying you're terrible. We're saying that on the inclusion, this isn't an unhappy population. This is amplifying the voices of those that come from different backgrounds. This is an NPS style situation where neutral is negative, effectively. Let's talk through what this is actually telling you, and not just the numbers that you see. So I think you've got to be ready for all of that. You've got to have the right people that you've pulled in to the conversation. And I would say commit for a period of time. You can't do this as a one-off exercise. I don't think it tells you enough. The power really lives in progress. So if, again, describing my journey, you can see that as a tip or not. The first time I assumed we weren't going to land super well in some of this scoring, just based on the anecdotal conversations I'd had around the firm. When the results first came out, we were below industry on almost everything. Not everything, but almost everything. So we had some celebration moments, but there was a lot of, here's where you need to do better. And that was shock, and that was defensiveness, and that was, hang on, this can't be right. But then it was, okay, now what do we do? And the progress that we made in just 12 months, like we got to industry bench in the space of 12 months. There are things we are ahead of industry bench on now. The change just in our population, and, participation went up from 60 something to 80 something % in 12 months. Again, I think reflecting belief that there was some value in contributing and participating to this. And that's where the power has come from. Our partnership saw that and they were like, oh, okay, maybe there is a thing to solve here. Maybe there is genuine benefit in addressing specific topics. So I think you really have to invest over a period of time and be very honest that there's going to be slugs under those stones that you're going to have to address.
And a bit of mold as well.
Probably.
I think power in progress is an incredible phrase, and also power in data. You've got to understand your people, and that will be negative, but also it's going to be positive. Just then you answered 3 questions from the floor, which I didn't ask you, which is incredible. And I'm very, very cognizant of your incredibly important time. We've got one final question. If you can bear with me. What strategies have worked best for gaining leadership buy-in and ensuring ongoing commitment to D&I efforts? I'll just caveat that just with, it's a personal thing, not a Diversio. It's as much the general populace as much of the leadership, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's fair. So I can maybe answer both of those questions almost separately. So with leadership, I took again, you can probably see I've invested quite a lot of time in this because I believe in it, but I'm not the only one. But I tend to take a multifaceted strategy. If you think about the concept of marketing and sort of target market segmentation, I tried to take a view on what might drive those particular individuals to change. Some of them fundamentally believe in it at their core, and that's an easy win. You can just make sure you're trying to bring those along with you in the story. Some they only are interested in the economic reality. So it's how can you plant a story with them of some economic reality that you've seen. So I spent a lot of time gathering. I literally have something that pops up every 3 weeks of kind of EDI critical commentary. I try to add to it every few weeks, but also it's just reminding myself of what are the stories, whether they are financial, whether they are, it's just the right thing to do, whatever they are, having my case studies available to me. And for some people where they sort of think they get a bit anchored in one thing, or this is just about gender, isn't it, or whatever, trying to find the really independent case studies that they're going to respond to. So my favorite one, it's years old now, but I still think it's quite fun and quite demonstrative, was when the sort of YouTube app was first launched on phones. Yeah. And within 24 hours of it being launched, they realized it didn't work for left-handers. The video is only turned one way on the app. Yeah. And so because it was exclusively designed by right-handers, who are 90% of the population, there was this 10% who had just not been catered for in the conversation. And it's as simple as that, right? If you've not got everyone in the discussion, you're not going to get to the very best outcome. You're going to miss something. So yeah, really for me, it was about finding that, another obvious one is these days, most people know someone or are a parent of, or a parent of a friend of someone who's experienced a mental health challenge, someone who has had a gendered experience, someone who has been mistreated because of, their sexuality, and finding that personal connected core and saying, well, if it's existing in your universe here, surely you see how that exists here, and we've got a capacity to bring change for the future. That was a very long answer, sorry, but I tried to personalize it essentially.
No, completely, absolutely, yeah. I think it speaks to an absolute truth.
And then I think for the broader employee base, part of that is harnessing the believers. So, our committee started with essentially just a bunch of people who thought we should do better on this. And so we didn't necessarily have a load of directional support, which again is where actually diversity have been super helpful. You guys always say treat us as your fractional EDI consultants. It's been really helpful to have that value of, all right, here's the 75 ideas we've come up with, and you going, here's 3 that I think will make a difference based on the data that you've got. How about you do those, and let's see where we go from here. But it was really, at least in that moment, we had a group of people who really cared, and therefore if we could collectively agree what messages we were trying to get out, they were all off in their spaces trying to deliver those messages too. In phase 2, we actually tried to recruit the cynics, so those who had at some point vocally told us they thought it was all a load of rubbish and leadership didn't believe. We brought a couple into the fold, because actually how best to change hearts and minds than to use the cynics. What is it that you disagree with here? Tell us. Let's figure out how we can do it differently. And now I'd say we're entering phase 3, where we're trying to make sure we're fully representative now of the organization that we've become. So we really like our ethnicity statistics. I think we've gone from having less than 10% of individuals from that background to getting on for 20% in the space of 2 years worth of data. And so now we need to make sure that the group represents that broader population. So we've succeeded at the diversity bit, succeeded to an extent on our journey, but what do we do to keep it inclusive and to make sure we're representing all voices? So I think there's something as well about just being continuously aware of what's the narrative and what's the story, and have you got the right people to help you shape the response.
Wow, amazing. Zoe, thank you so much for sharing your insights. I'm quite candid, and we really appreciate your transparency. How Oakley Capital still navigating people
very much on the journey.
I think the key takeaway today, it is a process, it is a journey. There isn't a right or wrong, but obviously if you've got incredibly smart people like Zoe and Zoe's team and people across the org, that everyone can work in a very collaborative and inclusive way to drive the right outcomes, both commercially, but also for people and culture. Thank you to the folks asked the questions. Thank you for everyone else that joined today. And as always, thank you to Zoe for spending time on this. We really, really appreciate your collaboration now, but obviously going forward, and your incredible team. So have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next month. Thank you, Zoe. Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.